The Israel-Iran conflict presents a new cost of living threat, and I want to talk about why that is in this video. Now, you'll be no stranger to the fact that over the past 4 or 5 years since COVID, we've seen energy prices increase, prices increase. As a result of that inflation, we've also then seen monetary policy change, which means that we've seen interest rates increase, and interest rates now seem to be coming down, as are energy prices and fuel costs. This feels like it's another international incident which is going to make that case a little bit worse, at least for people in the UK right now, because of a number of factors which we'll talk about in this video. But just from my personal point of view, as you guys probably know, just following the channel, I'm actually in the UAE, which is just a stone's throw from where all this is happening. And for me personally, this is a bit of a weird one because every time you hear this type of news, I've always been in the UK, which is a good few thousand miles away. So it's not really kind of like on your doorstep, if you will. And strangely, life just continues here. And we don't see any difference at this point in time. And honestly, it's very, very weird knowing that there are ballistic missiles just flying a few hundred miles away from here. It's a little crazy. But anyway, let's talk about what's happened since we've started to see initially Israel bomb Iran and then Iran then retaliate. We've started to see last Friday that oil prices have jumped 13%. Now you might say that 13% is a big spike, and it actually is. And it's not uncommon to see a spike of this nature when a conflict like this kicks off in this region. Now, one thing that is worthwhile mentioning is that when you think about the Middle East, and the Middle East are huge players when it comes to the global oil production. Now, when we look at the biggest players, Iran isn't one of the biggest players. Actually, they're one of the smaller players. They have about 3% of the total kind of like market when it comes to things like natural gas, for example, right? But one thing that is interesting is that Iran, because of the American sanctions, they pretty much export all of their oil to China. Now, if this conflict becomes protracted, and we're hearing from Donald Trump that it is quite possible that the Americans are going to jump in here, if it is a protracted um, conflict and the Hormuz Strait, for example, or the Strait of Hormuz, as they call it, is disrupted in any way, shape, or form, then China is going to lose out. And what that means is that because China is the second largest economy on the planet, if they have to go find a different market to provide them with oil, then you're going to have this basic economic equation where you're going to have quite a lot of demand for something that is going to be in short supply, and that in itself is going to be inflationary to the cost of oil, gas, all this stuff that we absolutely need for energy purposes. And so there were already predictions that, gas could, oil, a barrel of oil could hit $100 a barrel again. And at the moment, it's not quite there. So all of these fears are fueling this conversation around the impact of what this might mean for the UK. Now, specifically, if I think about it, you have to then maybe take a journey down memory lane. What did we see post COVID? We saw energy prices increase. As a result of that, we also saw fuel prices increase. Those two things being inflationary meant that because inflation then ticked up, we saw the bank base rate, which is monetary policy in the UK, increase as well. And that meant interest rates went up, which means that mortgage rates went up. So all of a sudden, we found ourselves in this situation where we're contending with energy prices going up, fuel prices going up, food prices going up as well, because it costs more money to transport the food to the stores, to Tesco's. And then, as a result of all of this, you then saw mortgage rates go up because of the Bank of England interest rates going up as well. So it's kind of this vicious circle. And the fear is we're going to see something similar to this if this is indeed a protracted conflict. Now, we're in a really interesting space at the moment because we've made a lot of headway when it comes to inflation and the Bank of England base rate and mortgage rates coming down from what the highs were back in 2022, I want to say, right? We've made some really, really good progress, I should say. But we're still in a very, very precarious situation, particularly with some of the choices that the government has made and the spending review recently. There is still this huge question over, is it going to be necessary to have tax rises, more tax rises, because the economy isn't doing too well? Now, in the UK specifically, one of the things that I think would be natural to expect is energy prices going up as a byproduct of this. And energy prices going up because, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of storage in the UK for things like, liquefied natural gas. We just don't have that, the amount of storage that we would have, so we can buy things in bulk and have that in our coffers to use for the future. And so we have to go to the market quite regularly. And if prices are increasing, you can bet your bottom dollar this is going to be passed down to consumers, so households in the UK. And that in itself could kick off an inflationary conversation. And when you get into inflationary conversations, you then start talking about what happens with monetary policy. Does the Bank of England base rate increase in mortgages alongside it? I don't have the answer to all of this. And the truth is, this is still very, very early days. I would like to think, or at least I know that many people will be thinking and hoping and praying right now, that there is some de escalation that comes shortly. Because if we do a situation where there is a protracted conflict in the Middle East, or there's a war and other nations get drawn into this, as many people are speculating, this could be not just a problem about inflation and cost of living crisis. This could just be global issues. And I don't think that we're going to get there. I think, or at least I hope, calmer heads will prevail at some point to get us to a point where we can have a conversation about this. But it's a very interesting space right now, and it's one to watch, because if this does not get de escalated, this is going to hit the UK hard. And decisions are going to have to be made around monetary policy if food prices, energy prices, fuel prices go up sustainably over a consistent period of time, because again, this conflict is protracted. And many people will be asking what the government is doing right now. Look, I don't want to be a politician in this kind of conversation, and this is not really the channel to talk about what the politicians will be doing. But what we can do on this channel is talk about how do you keep yourself maybe a little bit insulated around this. And look, if you haven't already done this already, this may not come across as useful, but hopefully if you have been following the channel, you've been, keying into the things that I talk about here on the channel. If you've got an emergency fund, those kind of things are going to really, really help you right now, just in case prices do increase, to give you that financial buffer. That's the most important thing right now. If you haven't got an emergency fund, or you don't feel you've got a healthy enough emergency fund, now would be a really good time to start prioritizing how you're going to give yourself a little bit more of a cushion to insulate yourself against this. This isn't about knowing that something is definitely going to happen. This is anticipating what might happen down the line. And the better insulated you are, the more protected, the safer you're going to feel, and the more secure you're going to feel from a financial point of view. I know that sounds like very rudimentary, but the simple things are the things that count the most. I think in this conversation, again, we got to keep our eye on it, but really, I just do hope that calmer heads prevail. And we get to a point where this can be de-escalated. I'm actually coming home tomorrow. I'm jumping on a flight tomorrow morning. So it's going to be interesting to see what route Emirates take, because I'm pretty sure they're not going to be flying over Iraq and Iran, which is the typical route. At least I hope not. But I'll catch you next week.